They're watching L24, Midnight News coming to you live from Algeria, and to the headlines. With the fights raging on, despite a planned 24-hour ceasefire, the vicious battle between the two Sudanese military commanders for control over the country continued for the fifth day on Wednesday. Sahrawi President Ibrahim Ghali affirmed that the Sahrawi people cannot accept that a peace process by United Nations attempt to legitimize an illegal military occupation. In remarks meant to reflect social aid fraud in the country, the left-wing opposition in France has criticized Finance Minister Bruno Le Mer for saying those who receive social aid from French state often send it illegally to their families in the Maghreb. American-made Patriot missiles have arrived in Ukraine, providing Kiev with long-sought shield against the Russian airstrikes. Hello again and welcome. A new attempt at a ceasefire and first fighting between Sudanese troops and paramilitary forces in Khartoum failed on Wednesday, leaving people fearful about short food supplies and a breakdown in medical services. Nabil Khazini.
For 5 days, the sky in Khartoum was dark of intense fighting, making the country's future obscure too. Too bad for those who hoped for a ceasefire, as the relentless sound of gunfire will continue. A 24-hour truce was supposed to come into effect on Wednesday evening, but the attempt has failed. Dozens of people are left now fearful about dwindling food supplies and a breakdown in medical services.
We request respect for the civilian population, for the health facilities. And we request a passage for the humanitarian workers, including those of Médecins Sans Frontières, that we tried as much as possible to support the health system of Sudan before, and now we have the capacity to scale up, but without the space and the safety guarantees for our staff, that's not going to be easy.
The bloody battle between Sudan's army and the rival, the paramilitary group, the RSF, has left 270 people dead and thousands of others injured. Civilians are those who are paying the heavy price. The fear now is that the Sudanese capital will turn into a ghost city. Terrified Sudanese who have been trapped in their homes for days by fighting in the capital are trying to flee the nightmare they are living in since Saturday.
The fighting is ongoing and there hasn't been a ceasefire. Only this morning people were dying right in front of us. There were people working by the Nile who died.
We were told to get out. Anyone who is able to leave. We can't just sit around. We need to make a living.
Earlier, fighting renewed between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces over the Palace of the Republic, the army's general command, and Khartoum International Airport. Sudan's armed forces accused the rival, the RSF, of failing to implement an internationally brokered truce for humanitarian purposes.
In the same line of thought, the UN Security General Antonio Guterres will attend a virtual meeting of Sudan Thursday, bringing together the African Union chairperson, the Secretary General of the Arab League, the Executive Secretary of the East African Bloc, and others to discuss ways how the international community will help this situation in Sudan. Now, moving on to a different topic. The President of the Republic
update on Sudan. Earlier today, the Secretary General spoke with President William Ruto of Kenya to discuss the situation in Sudan. He also spoke to the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki. During that discussion, it was decided that the Secretary General will attend a virtual meeting tomorrow on Sudan.
To a different matter now, coming back to Algeria, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, signed on Sunday a presidential decree granting pardon to 8,985 detainees definitively sentenced, and this is on the occasion of Eid al-Fitr. This pardon benefits detainees and non-detainees who have been definitively sentenced and who have only 12 months or less left to serve, and 18 months for the benefit of definitively sentenced persons whose age is equal or exceeds 65 years, minors, pregnant women, and mothers of children whose age is less. The Sahrawi President, Secretary of the General Polisario Front, Ibrahim Ghali, affirmed that the Sahrawi people cannot accept that a peace process led by United Nations turns into an open attempt to legitimize an illegal military occupation. President Ibrahim Ghali, in his speech during his supervision of the founding session of the Sahrawi National Council, again called on the UN Security Council to expedite imposing the implementation of the UN African Settlement Plan for the year 1991, as it is the only framework for a peace solution of the Sahrawi conflict.
إن الشعب الصحراوي لا يمكنه القبول.
The Sahrawi people cannot accept that a peaceful process led by the United Nations becomes an attempt to legitimize an illegal military occupation. We reiterate our call on the Security Council to rapidly apply the UN and African Settlement Plan of 1991, which constitutes the only frameworks for a peaceful resolution signed by the two parties to the conflict, the Polisario Front and Morocco, and approved by the UN Security Council.
جبهة البوليساريو والمملكة المغربية ومصادقة مجلس الأمن الدولي.
The UN Security Council is holding a closed session chaired by Russia to discuss developments of the situation in conflict in Western Sahara. The members of the Council will listen to a briefing by the personally involved, the Secretary General of the United Nations for Western Sahara, Staffan de Mistura, on the latest developments that accompanied the file, including results of the informal consultations that took place with the two parties to the conflict. De Mistura also reviews the work and role of United Nations mission for referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, and ways to revive the political track of the Sahrawi issue. The opposition in the Spanish parliament criticized President, or rather Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, asking him to explain the hidden reasons behind changing his position on the Sahrawi issue without consulting anyone. This came during an accountability session held by the Spanish parliament today.
When he was asked by one of the participants in a conference how much Morocco paid him, he couldn't answer, but we invite him to answer simpler questions. What motivated him to change his position towards the Western Sahara issue without consulting anyone, which runs against the position of his government and the parliament, as well as his program and partisans, and even our foreign policy on the southern borders? Can he justify his adherence to the Moroccan plan regarding the Western Sahara issue, while he was the one who started his mandate with receiving a high-ranking official from the Polisario Front?
The Tunisian Coast Guard issued a statement late on Tuesday confirming that at least 15 people are missing after their boat sank off the coast of Tunisia, while 4 others were rescued. According to a news agency Reuters, the boat had left Tunisia near the town of Kerkana, and the migrants had been hoping to reach Italy. Since the beginning of April, more and more boats have got into trouble off the coast of Tunisia, resulting in just over 50 deaths or missing people on that route. The UN warned that food insecurity is worsening and spreading across West Africa, adding that about 48 million people suffer from famine. Some 45,000 people in the Sahel region are on the brink of starvation. Conflict and economic fallout from COVID-19 and inflation have worsened food insecurity in the Sahel region. To a different matter now, Chinese President Xi Jinping and visiting Gabonese President Ali Bongo Ondimba on Wednesday agreed to elevate the comprehensive cooperative partnership between the two countries to a comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership during the talks in Beijing, noting that the two countries will celebrate the 50th anniversary of the diplomatic relations next year. Xi said over the last half-century, China and Gabon have firmly supported each other, safeguarded their common interests, and upheld international fairness and justice. France's Minister of Economy and Finance, Bruno Le Mer, have sparked widespread controversy and is being faced with opposition criticism after accusing Maghreb citizens living in France of illegally sending social aid they received from French government to their relatives at home.
The Macron's 100 days to mend his broken rapport with the French kicked off with a flurry of ministerial announcements on Tuesday that left little doubt as to the direction France's minority government plans to take as it seeks to regain the initiative and find new allies in parliament. French Finance Minister Bruno Le Mer is facing criticism from the left-wing opposition after his statements in an interview with the BFM TV. He made remarks meant to reflect social aid fraud in the country, accusing people of illegally sending social aid received from the French state to their families in the Maghreb region.
Nos compatriotes légitimement en ont ras-le-bol de la fraude.
Our citizens are tired of fraud. When it comes to social benefits, they do not want at all to see people benefit from aid and send it to the Maghreb region or elsewhere, at a time when they are not entitled to do so. The social model is not designed for such actions.
Alors qu'ils n'y ont pas droit. C'est pas fait pour ça, le modèle social.
Prominent left-wing leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon did not fail to attack the government, accusing it of discriminating against Muslims.
Dear Muslim compatriots or natives like me of the Maghreb, prepare yourselves to distract attention. The government announces, through the voice of Bruno Le Mer, a new campaign to point out at you cold blood.
The decision to single out immigrants from criticism was swiftly denounced by the left-wing opposition, which accused the government of once more pandering to the right and far-right, a bid to divert attention from the battle over pensions, which has triggered nationwide protests in past months and led to a 30% drop in Macron's popularity.
Here is the beginning of the 100 days of unity that Emmanuel Macron promised yesterday. A racist attempt at national unity, fanning delusions against the Arabs. We know the next target. The poor with forced labor to get the RSA.
Social fraud in France is estimated at between $1 to $2 billion annually, compared to between 88 to over $100 billion annually in financial fraud. Leftists called on Le Mer to go check in Switzerland, pointing out to the involvement of French businessmen and influential personalities.
Now, in Russia-Ukraine file, according to Ukraine's defense minister, the Patriot air defense systems the Ukrainian government had called for to help the country defend itself from air attacks have arrived. Germany offered the sophisticated Patriot missile defense system to Kiev after training Ukrainian soldiers. For their part, American-made Patriot missiles have also arrived in the Ukraine, the U.S. defense minister said Wednesday. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Wednesday that he had visited Moscow-controlled parts of Ukraine's southern Kherson and easternmost Lugansk provinces. Speaking at government meeting on Wednesday, Putin recalled that he visited literally a day ago. Mr. Putin added that his visit aimed was to meet with the military.
You know for sure that literally a day ago I visited both the Kherson region and the Luhansk region. There are a lot of questions. I will not return to them. The purpose of the trip was to meet with the military, whom I did not want to distract for a long time and a long distance from the deployment of the units they command. The situation calls for them to be there. But what would you like to pay attention to? I think everyone is well aware of this. If not, then I will tell you. I passed the Kokovo checkpoint. Well, there is a lot of transport there.
Same line of thought, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu has inspected Yars strategic missiles systems in the Kaluga region south of Moscow. The Russian Defense Ministry said on Wednesday the strategic missile base visited by Shoigu and Strategic Missile Forces Commander Sergei Karakayev is the first one which is armed with new Yars silo-based missile systems. The ministry said, according to reports, Shoigu was briefed on the combat capabilities of the missiles. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro received the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in his office at the Miramar government palace in Caracas. Russia and Venezuela reviewed some of the hundreds of bilateral agreements covering the financial, energy, agricultural, and other sectors during discussions between the top diplomats and other high-level officials Tuesday in the South American country.
У нас с Венесуэлой очень богатая повестка дня.
We have a very rich agenda with Venezuela. Many practical projects are being implemented. We discussed this in detail today and told you about it. And this cooperation actually contributes to strengthening the foundations of an independent national economy, not dependent on whims and blackmail from our Western colleagues.
While Ukraine accused Russia of sabotaging the Black Sea grain deal, Russia, on the other hand, also accused Ukraine of sabotaging it by demanding bribes from ships' owners to register new vessels. Miriam Zian on What's Follow.
Russia and Ukraine continue trading accusations on the Black Sea grain deal. Kiev accused Moscow of sabotaging the grain agreement on Monday, and 2 days later, Russia claimed that Ukraine is sabotaging it by asking for bribes from ship owners to register new ships. Both countries say the deal brokered by Turkey and the UN is in a danger of collapsing, just as Poland, Hungary and Slovakia have imposed import bans on Ukrainian cereals. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said the Joint Coordination Center in Istanbul was experiencing difficulties registering new vessels and inspections. For its part, Kiev said Russian inspectors this week stopped letting through vessels supposed to ship grain from Ukraine, but also declared that inspections of ships were resuming as of Wednesday. The grain pact will expire on May 18th. Besides, Russia has repeatedly warned it will not renew it unless the West agrees to lift restrictions on payments, logistics, and insurance which are delaying its exports.
As we said numerous times, we do not see progress that would assure us that the initiative is implemented on both tracks, because there are two tracks of this initiative, as you know, the grain initiative for Ukraine and the memorandum of understanding between Russia and UN, which provides for the export of the Russian grains and fertilizers, which is not being implemented despite all the efforts the Secretary General is making.
Russia and Ukraine have long been known as breadbaskets and are two of the world's key agricultural producers and major players in the wheat, maize, rapeseed and sunflower seed markets. The grain deal is crucial for food security, as it shipped more than 11 tons of agricultural products to the global market.
The Bulgarian government on Wednesday approved a temporary ban on imports of Ukrainian grain and other food products after Hungary expanded its ban to include more foodstuffs. Bulgarian Prime Minister said that after the establishment of corridors for Ukrainian grain, large quantities of food products in the country have routed and the main production trade chain have been disrupted.
The main reason for introducing the grain ban is that over the past year, contrary to the plan for the so-called solidarity corridors, a significant amount of food has remained in the country and disrupted the main production and trade chains. If this trend persists and even increases, it is possible to reach extremely serious consequences for the Bulgarian business.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that the United States looks forward to welcoming Sweden as a NATO member before the alliance's upcoming summit in July and will encourage Turkey and Hungary to approve accession. Sweden applied to join NATO in May last year, and its accession has been held up by Turkey and Hungary, who have yet to ratify Sweden as a member. Coming back to the Middle East, the besieged Gaza city is witnessing a skyrocketing prices of traditional sweets, which have always decorated the tables of the strip's inhabitants during the blessed Eid al-Fitr, forcing many of them to abandon some of the traditions and customs on this important holiday due to the high prices.
These are the besieged streets of Gaza, and this is the atmosphere reigning in its markets, which are preparing to welcome the first day of the blessed Eid al-Fitr. However, this atmosphere has been disrupted by the skyrocketing prices generated by the blockade imposed on the Gaza Strip for nearly 2 decades now.
Last year the situation was better. People's financial situation was better, but this year it's different. Many employees did not get paid. Whenever I ask them about their situation, they say that they barely can buy Eid stuff. Although we are selling shoes at cheap price, they still cannot afford buying them for their children.
The prices of traditional products and sweets that Gazans used to buy during Eid al-Fitr are soaring day after day due to the siege and the continuous attacks and exactions perpetrated by the Zionist entity against this city and its population in recent years.
Eid al-Fitr this year comes in the beginning of summer season, and as merchants, we look forward to it every year. Due to low salaries and the bad economic situation that we are facing, as well as the political situation, people today are not the same as previous years.
The outrageous high cost has had heavy and negative effects on the lives of Gazans during the month of Ramadan, and forced them to change their lifestyles and limit their purchases to a minimum and perhaps even less than that to face up to the increasing high prices.
And now for more international news all around the world. Let's follow this roundup by Hussein Barkan.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky visited the country's northwestern Volyn province on Wednesday, including where the borders of Ukraine, Poland, and Belarus meet. During the visit, the president was shown the border fences, drones used by the border guards, and spoke to the guards themselves. Zelensky also awarded several border guards with state decorations, and those who had fallen in the line of duty were honored with a moment of silence. Miguel Diaz-Canel on Wednesday was confirmed by the Cuban National Assembly for a new 5-year term as president. He also remains as secretary of the Cuban Communist Party after a final hand vote called by Esteban Lasso, president of the National Assembly. In his new term, Diaz-Canel must deal with national shortage in food, medicine, and energy, as Cuba faced continued tough U.S. sanctions as well as discontent among the island's population, expressed in part through record rates of immigrations to the U.S. and elsewhere. Russia's defense ministry said that 8 of its long-range bombers flew over neutral waters in the Sea of Japan. The aircraft provided air support to the forces of the Russian Pacific Fleet, a Pacific Fleet task force including a corvette and smaller anti-submarine ships, held firing drills in the Sea of Japan on Tuesday. The training and drills are part of a snap review of Russian forces in the Pacific ordered by President Vladimir Putin, which started on April 14 and is set to last until April 22nd. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has ordered officials to launch the first spy satellite as planned, saying that boosting reconnaissance capabilities is a priority to counter threats from the United States and North Korea. During a visit to National Aerospace Development Administration in the Pyongyang on Tuesday, Kim urged deployment of satellite as scheduled and ordered deploying multiple reconnaissance satellites on different orbits to bolster the country's surveillance capabilities.
And in our news bulletin with the UEFA Champions League quarter-final games, Pep Guardiola and Manchester City have beaten Bayern Munich 4-1 on aggregate and will play Real Madrid in a repeated semi-final of last year's competition where Madrid snatched the 50th title. The Norwegian superstar scored the opening goal on the counter-attack in the 57th minute, and Joshua Kimmich scored the Bavarian consolation from the penalty spot in the 83rd minute to reach the end whistle with an easy 4-1 victory over all four citizens. On the other game, and from Germany to Italy, where Inter Milan drew 3-3 with Benfica in the second leg of their Champions League quarter-final to advance 5-3 on aggregate and set up a derby clash with AC Milan in the semi-finals. As expected, Benfica started the match on the front foot as they looked to overturn the 2-0 defeat, but the game went in favor of the host Inter to meet the city rivals AC Milan. The first leg will take place on the 9th and the 10th of May, with the second leg to be played on the 16th of the same month. And that's all we have for now. Thank you ever so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And for now, good night.